everyone to the meeting of the Nicholas County Board of Education for Tuesday, September 5th. This is a public input board listing session and a regular meeting. And at this time, if you'll stand for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Please join the board with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so the first part of our meeting tonight is to listen to public input board listing session on the three proposals that we submitted to FEMA. And we want to remind that the board will only be listing these comments and will prepare a written response to all comments received during both the listing sessions and in the written comment period after, and that the responsive document will be made available for the public's review. Other than that, the board will not be, just as long as the public understands, the board will not be responding. And normally our lawyer from Steptoe and Johnson, Marissa Nortz, is here, but in her place tonight is Keely.
Yeah, that's me.
Keely
Utt.
Glad to have you. And at this time, is there anyone here for a public listing?
No one's called in, no one's signed up.
Make it part of the record that no one did appear.
So let it be known that it's 4:04 and it was supposed to start at 4 o'clock and no one has showed up to speak. So therefore, move on with the agenda.
Move into the regular agenda.
Early summer.
Back in 2 weeks.
She still needs to bill us for what time?
Oh, she would.
For sure. Okay. And so number 4, approval of the agenda. Is everybody okay with the agenda?
The only changes we'll have will be on personnel, which Mr. Vice will go through and get some personnel changes.
Okay. Number 5, approve the minutes of meetings held on August 21st, 2023. Are those on here, Kim?
Yes.
The minutes are right up there. Well, they were.
Just second from the top.
Okay.
Go back up.
Ah,
Get the wrong date.
finally. Oh, light switch.
Your show.
Yes. Still down towards the bottom on mine.
All amended.
Next one.
I'll make the motion that these minutes be approved as presented.
There's one correction that I found it.
Okay.
And under your last bullet, under number 5, I think you meant to say hand out the flyers. It says the board agreed that Mr. Henshaw could hand out the computers with the option to purchase the insurance. Did you mean hand out the flyers? Because we didn't have to give him permission to hand out the computers.
He was going to hand them out with them, so is that what, flyers? Is that what you want to say?
Well, what do you want to call those, Mr. Henshaw? Pamphlets? What were they? Insurance forms?
Optional agreements.
Okay. That's the only thing I have.
Okay.
Sorry. So, I think with that, you good with making your motion still?
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right. Superintendent's information updates.
I usually start my presentation with our updates on our construction projects. We did have a meeting today at Cherry River and made some headway on a few issues. One of the things we got some closure finally on is our preschool playground. The location for the preschool playground that's eventually will be its permanent location, now going to be a temporary location because they're still doing construction work. But they didn't want us to, originally they didn't want us, the contractors did not want us to use that area because they'd be doing some work on the facing of the building and so forth. But today, they told us that that would be a year down the road. So they've given us permission to use that area. We will not install any permanent structures at this time. We will just put some temporary things up there and put some fall gravel down or fall stuff down for the kids' safety, but we'll be able to start on that. Alan Stump was on that call with us today, and he is aware of it, and we're going to move forward with getting that area ready. And then a year from now, then we'll revisit it. It gives us a year to figure out where else we can move that playground while the school is being finished. The other thing is I did pass out, Chris Campbell from ZMM sent me a copy of the Lake Creek masquerading site package, and I know Dave Ferguson's going to be talking about later in the agenda. It's on the agenda later, but I went and made you all copies, so I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'll just lay it up there for now. But then the other thing we learned today is that, and this is a vote item on the agenda, and I've already mentioned Mr. Prine today, that one of the items on the agenda was discussion, possible approval of Sharon Glasscock's request for a basically a right-of-way to allow their traffic to continue the way it's been doing. Well, there's been a lot of back and forth, and to my knowledge, for the first time today, at least Chris, he told me this, and I hadn't heard it before either, is that we needed to send a letter on behalf of the Board of Education consenting to the abandonment of Country Road 39/54 in its entirety for the purpose of proposed school project. County Route 3954 is a loop road and does not serve any other parcels other than the Board of Education property consisting of the existing Cherryville Elementary School. Currently, Terradon Engineering is working with Mr. James Ellison of D9 regarding the permitting of the project for work in the DOH right-of-way. A current PDF set of civil plans of the project have been sent to him for review and approval. And if you have any questions or concerns, do not hesitate. I have prepared this letter. I gave you all a copy of the letter. And we waited long enough on getting this permission. And on the board agenda, I've suggested that when we get to that item on the agenda, we table it until the next board meeting. By law, if you table any item, you have to address it at the next regular board meeting. So hopefully we will get this sent out tomorrow it's not on the agenda to vote for, so I'm just going to do this. You can smack my hands later, but this is on behalf of the Board of Education in order to get this rectified and so we can get this taken care of. So that's something else that we talked about today. We'll go through the other things that I have on my list. Now I've got several of my directors who are going to talk to you just briefly about a couple things going on in our school system. Camden Clinic, I met with them last week, and I have talked to our school nurses. I talked to Martha Root by email today, and I spoke with Cheryl Childers, and I think we discussed this topic about allowing the Camden Clinic to train any volunteer staff members who want to get the training, not forcing anybody to do anything, on how to administer Narcan. We do have these in our schools, available to our schools. If you have an overdose, everybody knows what Narcan is. But we need to get more people trained on how to use it. And they would have to volunteer for the training, and Camden Clinic would provide that training. And Martha emailed absolutely. And Cheryl, I think we discussed this too, but I reached out to her by email. She did not respond. I will not contact Camden Clinic until I talk to them. At that point, I will bring it to a board agenda for the board to approve. We're not going to move ahead with this. It's going to wait a couple of weeks. But that's something we are pursuing. It's a shame that we have to go down that road these days, but we have to protect our kids. The other thing I talked with Cheryl about, I didn't get a chance to talk to Martha, looked for her all day, but I couldn't find her, but I was going to talk to her about this before the board meeting. But currently we have 5 schools that do not have a school-based health clinic at their disposal. Zela, Mount Nebo, Mount Lookout, Birch River, and Glade Creek. And I talked to them about the possibility of expanding their services for the 24-25 year to offer some kind of, even if it's a school having to share some medical assistance, but at least get some support out to all of our schools instead of leaving those 5 out. I asked why that had not been done in the past. They didn't have an answer for me, but I do know this. New River has been in our school system longer than Camden does. Now, New River's out of Fayette County. Camden's, of course, out of here. But New River was the first one to come and offer services to our kids. So I think it's only fair to talk to them also and see if they have any interest in expanding their services to our kids. And if they do, maybe they could take a couple schools, I'm just talking here, but Mount Nebo and Mount Lookout are on the Fayette end of the county. It might be easier for them to serve them. And then the other 3 schools, maybe Camden and Clinic could pick up. So this is going to be a progress, something you'll hear about during the year. We're going to try to expand our services to serve all of our students. Also, I mentioned to you all before, I reached out to our high schools about having a student representative come to each board meeting and just give us an update of what's going on in their high school. Both schools received that very well, but they were waiting until they had their class elections before they would select someone to do that. So hopefully by October, we'll have some students coming in and spend some time with us and sharing with us their thoughts. And the last thing I have before I go to my directors is my goals need to be set. I will come up with 2 goals that I'll provide to you all for the next board meeting that you all can either approve, change, or come up with new ones of your own but I have to have my goals set in September. And since we kind of got a late start with me, I'll try to come up with 2 goals that I think are appropriate. And then, like I said, you all can have the options to change those or add to them or whatever. Today was the first day of our ALC program, our new and improved, I hope, ALC program. And I've asked Amy Robertson, our director, to come up. And she loves speaking in front of a crowd. I know that. And we'll let her come and tell us about our first day, the challenges we're facing, and where we go from here.
Put that microphone on.
She's a pretty soft speaker, so it better be on. She always talks soft to that. She talks louder than me, but not that.
Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it on?
There's a system there.
I don't think so.
Because I don't see it switch here. I don't feel one. I'll use my big girl voice. So, good evening. Today was the first day for us for school. We had 12 students that attended. We had 7 high school students, 4 middle school students, and we had 1 student that was in the transition room. They came in, they entered the building, we all went to the cafeteria, we talked about non-negotiables, ate breakfast, then they were issued their computers, their laptops, we got their logins, we did put them all into Odyssey, and then we met again at the end of the day, and we talked about our day and routines. So we didn't have any issues, the students were very well behaved. We did have 3 students that were no-shows that I'm going to call this evening and see what the status is of them. But it's been interesting. I will tell you that I've had to redo everything from scratch. And so it's been fun. I look forward to it. I told the students today, and I said, to be honest with you all, I've really missed having that direct interaction with students. And I'm looking forward to working with you all. And they were very well behaved. They were very receptive. At the end of the day, I had a student, he said, Ms. Robertson, this is a lot different. And he said, I am going to work to go back to school. So one of the things that we talked about was every 9 weeks that they have the opportunity to earn the right to go back to school, and that there were 3 things. Number 1, academics. Number 2, attendance. And number 3, behavior. So I told all the students, if you meet those 3 requirements, then I'll have you all do an essay. We will set up a little meeting, and then I want to, have you explain why you think that you're ready to go back to your regular classroom building. And I said, this isn't something that we want to constantly, beat you down. There are consequences for your actions, but we want you to go back to the regular building. I also have the probation officer. I had contacted him and asked him to stop by. And then I've worked with probation officers very closely in Greenbrier County, and I really appreciated Aaron Evans coming over today and checking on the students. And then, he told the students, he said, she has my cell phone number, and it's not that it's going to be we caught you, it's going to be we're working together. The other thing that we talked about is that every Friday, starting September the 15th, that we are going to have the school psychologists utilize them to come over and to work with the students and, do some therapy sessions with them. We also have put together some life skills lessons because, I don't expect these students to just be in front of a computer all day long. And so I had brought with me a bag of lessons that the teachers that I had talked to them about. And we're going to do some life skills lessons with them, just general things. We also talked today about goals. Several of them, there are more boys over there than we have females, but they have some very high aspirations. So we talked about, to let us, number 1, build an atmosphere of mutual respect, and we have to trust each other, and our goal is to help you be successful. So I'm really happy with our first day, and I look forward to it.
Would you explain to the board what the non-negotiables are?
Yes, well, number one, no sleeping. Because, you know, I mean, you have kids and they come in and they just want to lay their heads down. But there's no sleeping, no energy drinks, no cell phones. When they walk in, they have to sign in, they have to go through the metal detector, they go straight into a room, they put down their items. We also talked about, you know, dress code and that they had to follow all policies and procedures there. And they were fine with it. And then we talked about vapes and things like that. And I told them, and I said, you know, I'm not one to just give you a slap on the wrist. And I said, I'm a one and done type of person. And I mean what I say and say what I mean. So, you know, I'm here to help you, be supportive, but we have to follow the rules. And so I had one little middle school student, he said, I like your rules, Ms. Roberts. And I said, well, I appreciate that. So we'll see how that goes. But, you know, kids want structure and they want routine and they will get on board. But today I was really excited because I will tell you, like I said, I've missed interacting with kids. And so this kind of gives me an opportunity to get back there and build those relationships. So I look forward to it.
I think one of the things that we need to kind of adjust a little bit is making sure those parents know, because we don't provide transportation any longer, for them to drop these kids off as close to 8 o'clock as possible, because there was like 10 of them out there this morning.
Yes.
And when it gets rainy or cold, and they don't come in till 8 o'clock,
Yes.
then they can get into mischief.
Oh, absolutely.
So we want to avoid that if we can.
Well, one of the things that I did with them is after we had covered all the rules, you know, and I had created a student handbook just for them, which I sent Mr. Beam a copy of that. And so I said, okay, guys, we're going to play a little game. What time do we arrive here? You know, so we talked about that. You know, what are the rules? And I mean, and they were answering. And so I explained to them, you know, 8 o'clock, you need to be picked up by 2:45. I did have an issue with the MTA because we do have a couple of students, and Charles is wonderful to work with. He's a supervisor for the MTA, and there was just a little misunderstanding, but they were here to pick up those 4 students who rode the MTA. And other than that, I mean, everything is smooth.
And I will get, you forwarded me a copy of the new handbook.
Yes.
We took the Black Sheep Squadron stuff
Yes,
off there.
all that's gone.
But you all will be getting a copy that I'll send it to you so you can see exactly what our guidelines are now.
Were you fully staffed today?
No.
We're
So
closer, we'll be closer after tonight's meeting too.
there were 3 of us. So, you know, but we managed. I mean, we made it. I actually was with the high school students, and I had the 7 students, and then Mr. Frame had the 4, and then Mrs. Carey had the 1 student. So, but they were fine.
Now, Kelly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think tonight we'll be hiring our high school teacher to work with those students. We have an interview for our, Mike, do we have an interview with our counselor? We have somebody set for an interview to be our counselor.
Yes.
And then we also, our aide, this other position we've not filled, we had several applicants, but they have to take the test first. And Janet's giving that test. So as soon as we get those done, we can be fully staffed. But we couldn't wait any longer to get school started for those kids.
But I've got a question, and I'm not, as you can see, I'm not in the education system, I'm always learning. The Alternative Learning Center is for kids that get in trouble in school. They've only been open a week. I mean, did that carry over from last year, or I'm just a little curious how we have students in a week?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and maybe Mr. Bean can
Okay, yeah.
explain
Some of
this.
those expulsions were like in March. And they were expelled for 365, so they started the
So
year.
it's 1 year.
So we knew we was going to have about a dozen kids starting off the year. Because we did have a couple of meetings this summer and got those kids back in their high schools, and they're doing really well so far.
So the
yeah.
expulsion's for a year from the day
Yeah,
they're
it's not
taught, and
school
it
year,
goes
it's a
that way.
calendar year.
But you have the ability to put them
petition.
back in school if they meet certain criteria, you can recommend it to
Yes.
the teachers, I guess, that you want
Well,
to come back
because
in,
here-
or how that works.
Here's the thing, is that when I was principal last year in Greenbrier County, and I had shared this with Mr. Bean, you know, we are overwhelmed in the school system with these DAB pins, the THC DAB pins. And in Greenbrier County, I mean, it's 365. And of course, you have to do a community service, and then you're written a ticket. But you get so many of those students that it's chronic. You know, and it's very unfortunate that here we are, and this is a society thing, and I mean, and my sister's also a principal in Greenbrier County, and she's had elementary students who have been caught with dab pens. So I talked to them about that because while I was explaining to them, I said, you know, when I was at Greenbrier West, my son's a sheriff in Greenbrier County, a deputy, and I actually, when he was on duty one day, I had to call an ambulance because I had 2 students that had taken a dab pen, and I said, guys, does anybody know what the FDA is? And they kind of hem-hawed around, and I said, that's the Food and Drug Administration. And I said, and these pens that you can buy in convenience stores, and they're selling them to minors in different areas, that, you know, you don't know what you're putting in your body. And I had a couple of students in Greenbrier County who had taken this dab pen, and then when my son came, because I had to call the ambulance, they passed out. It had fentanyl in it. I said, fentanyl will kill you. You know, and they're lucky that they survived. So, you know, all we can do is keep preaching and try, you know, to convince them otherwise, but it is a societal problem, and it's everywhere. In probably 4 months' time, I did 11 expulsions last year, just myself, for that reason, with the THC and the dab pens. And nowadays they make them, I don't know if you all have ever seen them, but I mean, some of them are so small, they're like smaller than my pinky, and they will hide them in their sleeves of their hoodies. And then they'll go to cough, and then they'll take a hit off of it, and you have no idea that the kids have used that. So, you know, and the vape detectors, I have the most extravagant vape detectors. They don't work because there's a way around those. So, you know, I'm not sure if you all have the vape detectors in your schools, but I can tell you firsthand, they do not work. But any other questions?
I've always been amazed if people would take that ingenuity to how to get around things and just focus it on the structure and getting to things, they'd be better off. In other words, you said they can get around that, they can get around that. And,
Oh, yes.
They find ways.
Yes.
So if they just take that same energy, because it's not like they're not smart enough. But no, that answers my question. So,
Are we saying we don't have expulsions, total expulsions?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
You still have. And that's one of the things we have changed. I didn't get into that yet, but they had, in the past, they had what was called a deferred expulsion, which, to be honest, I've never heard of that before. But we're not going to have those anymore. These will be expulsions. And when you expel a student, it's for 365 days, but the superintendent does have the authority to bring a child back before that 365 expires if they feel like the child has learned their lesson or not going to make that mistake again or whatever. But there are a few things that we don't bring them back for. For instance, if they are selling drugs in school, if they've assaulted an employee or they carried a deadly weapon, those are 365 and they're out. You know, and so we're not going to put those kids back in the school system until we have to.
No, you said 9 weeks, they have an option to apply back to the regular school system. Is that the minimum amount of time they're allowed to stay? I mean, do they have to stay at 9 weeks, or are there other periods where you decide they're ready to go back earlier?
Yes, like every 9 weeks, they need to be evaluated, because I'm telling you, with this THC and these vape pens, and with the principals and secondary, well, all principals, going to suspend, I mean, you will fill that place up, because it is unreal.
So you'll keep them a minimum of 9 weeks?
No, that's not entirely accurate. That's for expulsions.
Right.
We do have, in the past, they used short-term placements. In other words, if they didn't have an ISS room, they'd send a kid to, got in a fight on the playground for 3 days. We've changed that to now, it'll be at least 10 days. They'll have to handle those students at their own school, but if it gets to 10 days, if you're going to suspend a child for 10 days, they're going to go to the ALC, and then they can come back.
Okay.
But most of them will be 9 weeks. The ones that's long-term will be evaluated every 9 weeks.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So you said you basically had to start over?
Yes, sir. I didn't have anything but student records. Like, I had to create everything from scratch. And I will tell you, it's a good thing that I do have experience being a school principal, because it is rough to try to open up a building from scratch. Because when I talked to Mr. Bean, he said, you could probably use the month. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So, but we're ready, and like I said, I'm excited. And today was a good day.
Next on my list is.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Is, I want to ask Kelly to talk about community and schools and policies. I'll let you do the personnel later when we get to that part of the agenda.
Good evening. I have a handout here for just some information about communities and schools. You might have heard a little bit about this over the last few years. It's First Lady Kathy Justice's, one of her initiatives. Nicholas County does not currently have community in schools, but we're exploring the possibility of bringing it to Nicholas County. We have been offered a grant for 3 locations in the amount of $95,000 for each location.
We'll take it.
So that will pay for an employee plus some startup expenses, computers, printers, supplies, some things like that that they may need to get started. The second year, they would fund it at $75,000 because that's the anticipated cost of salaries. The focus of the community and schools is academic achievement, behavior, and attendance. This is not an addition to, this is to help our principals address those 3 items, to build community support and to build relationships with students. We're still exploring, and we'll be talking with the principals at our principals meetings to see which schools may be interested, and then try to select it based on a need. It has to be an elementary, a middle, and a high school, and they have to be feeder schools.
So it's going to have to be one side of the county or the other, basically.
Basically, yes. Yes.
Based on need.
Yes, based on the need, and of course buy-in from the schools, because any program to be successful, we want to have good buy-in. We're very excited about this opportunity, and more services that we can bring to our students and our families, just to develop those relationships will be very beneficial.
How many counties have this?
By the numbers, I have that for you. Unfortunately, it didn't print off in color the way I was hoping it would. But there are only about, it looks like about 3, well, I think there are 53 counties that currently have the program. But that's not the whole county. You see, it's 260 schools.
Now, is this for students in trouble, or is this just for the general
No.
population?
It can be for the general population, it can be for at-risk students, it can be for students in trouble, but it doesn't just have to be for those students. At-risk students, if we have a student that has a chronic absences, but has good grades, but they're just never at school, this would be an excellent program to get them involved in. This person could go into the home, go into the community, develop those relationships, see what's going on. If we have students that are missing because of transportation issues, they could work with the family in getting some transportation.
So they're sort of an advisory capacity, and they're trying to find out what's causing.
Yes, to dig a little deeper. And before it gets to a student assistant team meeting, these people could go in and start developing those relationships and helping. So they don't have to qualify under an IEP or a 504 or an SAT. They can just be a student that we're concerned about.
Can they volunteer?
Can this,
Can the students volunteer?
yeah, I mean,
They can come to you and
yes,
say,
absolutely.
I've got a problem.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we don't want these positions, we don't want them to be in an office somewhere off to the side. We want them in the lunchroom where students are, being visible, so that, and going into classrooms, starting to develop those relationships with those students there. Not out of the way where students have to go find them. We want them right out there helping.
When we had this in Pocahontas County, we didn't hire, when we hired our coordinators, they weren't teachers. These were people in the community that really just cared about the community, and they wanted to get involved in the schools.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I
How do
knew
you
that.
post
That's
the
what it
job?
was.
Yeah, we're looking at a coordinator position, which would be a professional position, and then 2 coordinators that would be service positions. So they would not have to have a professional degree. But the site supervisor or the professional would be over the program to make sure that the data is entered and everything is, the paperwork is done right. But then the other 2 positions would be just service positions. So they would have to have a high school diploma. We would post it asking for some college, preferred but not required.
It's more important to get somebody who really cares and is interested in helping their community. That's what we're looking for.
Yes, we are. We're looking for people that are already currently involved in community activities, is willing to go out there and put themselves out, ask for the community for things that may be needed, and help the students.
Will they receive training?
They will receive training. The community and schools will have a training that they will be required to go to. It's usually twice a year. They call it onboarding. So they will do a training for onboarding to get them familiar with the program, the paperwork and expectations. And then in the summer, they also have a training. I think it's a 4-day training in the summer. We're a little bit behind because of the timing, but they're willing to work with us and get us some training.
But the other thing that they do is they have a really good network in the State Department. You can call them and say, we'd like to get a Teams meeting together with just our people, just to talk to you about the issues we're dealing with in our county, and they'll do that with you on the spur of the moment thing. So they're very accessible to get support for your people.
And the team would be the 3.
Plus the principals,
Oh,
so that the principals would be fully informed at the beginning about what is going on. And then Mr. Williams also, this kind of falls under student services, that umbrella.
How many kids, if you got 3 locations and 3 coordinators, how many kids will each, do you envision each will impact or do? And tell me a little bit too, again, I'm a non-educator.
That's okay.
I keep saying that, but there's a reason for some of my questions. How much deeper, I guess this goes a lot deeper than your academic interventionist at school? I mean, because you're pulling these kids out of school and you're doing some academic intervention with them. And so just explain to me a little bit of what you're trying to accomplish by this.
Looking at the whole child, you have the academic interventionists that look at the academics and they deal with that. This person's going to look at the whole child and see, are academics on track for graduation? If not, what do we need to do? Are the attendance? Are they attending school regularly? Behaviors, at risk for behaviors. If they could be one area, but they're looking at the whole child. What else is going on? Do we need referrals for counseling? Do we need set up for tutoring? Do we need to refer them maybe to youth services to get some additional support outside the school? So they're going to kind of manage all of that, which individually each person may be doing but it's hard to get everybody together to talk about the whole needs of the whole child.
Does the
Also-
parent or the guardian stuff have to sign on
Yes.
this or
Yes.
agree to this?
Yes, yes, they do, and I'm glad you mentioned, because that's a very important piece, because they're gonna work closely with the parents and the guardians on, trying to, like you mentioned, trying to explain to non-school parents how the school is trying to help their child, and be that liaison between the parents and the school.
Well, just a personal comment. I think there is a gap between our educators and our parents, and of course, we have grandparents, and we have uncles, aunts raising these kids now. I do a lot of coaching, and I see who picks up the kids and who doesn't,
Absolutely.
counseling and stuff. And it's hard because I realize these parents have jobs and that they are looking for the public education system to educate their children. But I have found that it's just an asset, and the parents have to do a lot on their own at home, and that education, and of course, they got to find time and stuff too. I'm not taking up for them, whatever, but it is an issue.
And sometimes.
So if this coordination with the community can help with that, then I think that's a really good thing.
And sometimes it's intimidating,
Yes.
coming into the school system, not that we mean to be intimidating, but sometimes parents are not
No, I
as
would agree.
comfortable coming in and talking to us about concerns or issues and articulating that. And this really helps those parents feel more secure.
So my first question was about how many kids do you think you can impact with this?
I think we can impact 25 to 50 at each site, 25 intensely, 50 on the peripheral.
It sounds like it's sort of a life counseling program.
Yeah, but I don't want to use counseling because, we don't want to give the impression that these individuals are providing counseling services. Because, if a student needs counseling, then we certainly want to reach out to certified counselors or social workers to provide that. But they are doing, I would call it advising,
Mentorship, maybe?
mentorship,
Like, or a
advising.
Big brother.
Yeah, something
Hey,
like
it's,
that.
it's another set of eyes, so to speak.
And relationship building.
And it's not going to come out of our budget, and the more people we have, the better off we are.
Right, providing our students services, yes. And that going into the community, I think, will really be beneficial too for those parents. So you may see in the future, on future board agendas, more information about this, but we wanted to make sure that you had the information right at the start when we were exploring these opportunities.
Where did the grant come from? I'm just curious. What
It's a federal
foundation?
grant.
It's federal.
Yes, it's passed through by WVDE. It's a federal grant that passes through WVDE. And the other thing is policies. We have some policies that we need to update, and we have new policies that we are presenting tonight. One of the policies, as you know, in the past, you've been able to do teachers, subs in areas of critical needs for teachers. And if you have a retired teacher that works more than 140 days, and it's an area of critical need, it does not affect their retirement. So it's an incentive for those teachers to do that. They now allow that for bus drivers. So as part of your board packet, you'll see a policy for subs in areas of critical need for bus drivers. That was passed the last legislative session, and we want to certainly take advantage of that. It has to go through the same process. It'll have to go through and be approved by WVDE and then sent to the retirement board and approved by them. So it is a little bit longer process to get it approved through all of the steps, but that's why we wanted to start exploring that early. There are two others. One is an incentive for a notice of early retirement for service personnel. Currently, WVDE does it for professional, but not for service. So if a service personnel notifies us before March 1st that their intent is to retire the next fiscal year, and they have to work through the end of their current contract, they would be eligible for a $500 early notice bonus. This would not be funded by WVDE. It would be funded, it would be a county funding. The reason we're presenting that to you is this really allows us to do better planning during personnel season. And we may avoid giving someone a RIF or a transfer letter when then it turns out that we have to then go back and rescind that. And that's, that's a hard action to take on people when you're affecting their livelihood. If we just would have had better information, we would not have had to do that. So that is a $500 early retirement incentive notice.
Yeah, I saw that. When you get to that notice, and I did read through it or whatever, the next to last line, and I may be wrong, but it says no employee shall be eligible for both WVDE and the county attendance incentives.
Right. Well, that's a separate policy. We're going to talk, I'm going to get to that
That's
one
the
next.
incentive, I
Yes,
know, but
yes.
I just didn't know why they were referring to the attendance incentives in the retirement.
Okay,
incentive.
well, if so, then that would be my typo.
Yeah, that's what, I think it refers to the retirement,
Yes.
and I think it's mixing the two.
And
I
it may
just
be,
was
and
gonna
we'll
point
get
that out.
that correct.
I always say they do that so to make sure we read them,
Well, okay.
That's what I always tell my staff, when I find something, you just put that in there. So I
That's
can-
a good catch there, Mr. President.
Yes, but we do want to make sure that they're not eligible for both.
Yes.
You can get one.
And that's what I
or the
thought,
other.
I think they just
Yes.
mixed the words
Yeah.
up. I think.
And it's in the bus driver one?
No,
It's on the
it's
incentive pay for
incentive.
early notice of the retirement incentives.
Okay.
And it's the next to last one, and it talks about the
got
incentives, which is in the other agreement.
Right. And then the next policy that we had talked about trying to get those done quickly last week is the, shoot, now I lost it. Is the, it's the attendance incentive, I'm sorry. Currently, it's the same thing. The state does it for professionals, but not for service. And this would be one that would allow service employees to receive a $500 at the, paid out on June 30th if they miss 4 or fewer days during the school year. Again, this would be county funds, not state funds, because the state only does it for professionals. I really disagree when the state separates professionals and service, because I think that creates a division. We've had success in the past saving money on substitutes to cover the cost of this, because $500 to some service employees makes a huge difference. And we really, a school system cannot function without service employees. Service employees and professionals are both needed to run a well-rounded school system. So that is the other policy that we are presenting.
Is that paid just annually, 500, or do they do it quarterly?
No, it's annually.
It's looked at
Yep.
annually.
You have to miss 4 or fewer days throughout the school year. And so what I usually do is we run reports and we send out, congratulations, you are still eligible, just letting people know where they fall so that they can, and we wanted to bring this to you early so that we could let our service employees know early that we are considering this, and we would like to make this effective for this fiscal year.
Well, as a private businessman, we used to have attendance bonus stuff, and they're very highly effective. And you're right, when somebody misses and you spend a lot of money and may not be as effective.
Yes.
I mean, with that money too, so.
Well, the way I look at it is, when they hire a service or they hire a professional, the pay for professional is more to start with because of degrees and such. But they get the same insurance. They don't say, well, you're service, so you're only going to get half the insurance.
Right.
So why, they should be allowed to have all the incentives that the professional should have. I've always said that. I said that when I was AFT, said it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So
We're all on the same team.
we're all on the same team.
And And we want to stress that point, that we are all on the same team, and it takes everybody to make a school system function. So, and you know, I mean, bus drivers are just as, cooks and aides are just as important. We tell the bus drivers you're the first person they see every morning, and you can set the tone for a student's day. So that's why we wanted to make sure that we presented these options so that they felt a valued member of our team.
Thank you. The last director I have is Mike Williams. He's going to talk to you about Hope Scholarship and the number of homeschool students we're losing in Nichols County. And then I'll be done, Mr. President.
Good afternoon. Dean asked me to briefly speak on the number of homeschool enrollees over the last few years, as well as the new Hope Scholarship that was implemented last year by the Treasurer's Office. I'll start with the homeschool enrollment report, and I'll go backwards from the 2021 school year. We had 172 notice of intent to homeschool. 21-22 school year, we had 134 notice of intents to homeschool. 22-23, last year we had 109 notice of intents to homeschool. And this current year, and your all's figures are incorrect. As of Friday, it said 39. I got 3 new ones today, so that's 42 students with notice of intents to homeschool just for this school year. 2 of those students today, out of the 3, were from the transition room that Mrs. Robertson was talking about, that we were looking to reevaluate them at the 9 weeks. They said no, they wanted to be over there for the whole school year, and we explained to them that they'd been over there for 3 years, and it was time to try to reintegrate them back into the school system, so regular school. And so those and their families chose to go the homeschool route.
So that 42, that's not 42 new ones, that's 42 total right now?
And that's 42 just for this school year.
For that this year.
How are they evaluated?
So-
And what criteria are they set to, or are they?
Very little criteria. We have a notice of intent to homeschool on our board website that they complete, and a parent provides us a high school diploma or a equivalency. That's all they need. What they do is they're evaluated by us in grades 3, 5, 8, and 11. And it's either
Like all students? Yeah.
portfolio or a certified teacher looks over, or portfolio by a certified teacher reviewed to see if they're making progress, or a test. A lot of times they'll do the Terra Nova test, the Iowa assessment test, just to determine if they're making progress.
So how do we know whether they made it or not? Is that a column on here, or? No?
We don't, I mean,
And you can't challenge it. You just can't challenge it. Homeschool legislation has just taken
Carte
it away from our hands.
Carte blanche.
It is. It's a fight we've been fighting for several years. It's getting worse. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some really good, competent homeschool parents out there. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about ones who homeschool their kids because they don't want to be made go to school, and so they just keep home easier. That's the kind that we have to deal with.
And I have noticed that as I took over with truancy and filing some things in court, the going got tough for a lot of these folks. They would do notice of intents prior to me filing juvenile petitions or criminal complaints, unfortunately. Hope Scholarship is the next one that I wanted to talk about. Last school year in 2023, there was 15. And this is run through the West Virginia Treasurer's Office. This year, 43 notice of intents for Hope Scholarship. So for a total of 58, and we did have 3 students, siblings returned back to the public school system. So right now we have 55 under Hope Scholarship. Many of those are going to our local Christian school. Some are in Hope Homeschool, and others are through the Seventh-day Adventist, a few of those under Hope. So lastly, charter schools is coming up as well. Some of you may have seen very nicely done commercials on televisions about charter schools. We do not have any statistics at this time, but I know I talked to some guidance counselors about that, because what these charter schools are doing are sending requests for records to the schools, and they're sending them out from there and dropping them to charter school status.
We have charter schools in Nicholas County.
We don't. We have virtual charter schools that's they'll accept a lot of students. Most students. We were very, very picky when we were doing our virtual proximity learnings. There had to be requirements set, because our virtual proximity through SESC is rigorous, and we have to sit in online classes. Attendance is taken, and they're hard. Many of our virtual students decided this is not for us. We want to return back to school, and we allowed them to do that. Virtual charter schools is a little bit different.
Who pays for that? We do. We pay for that.
Okay. Yes. Definitely. Hope Scholarship, we do. Very concerned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Okay, Ms. Kim, do we have any delegations?
No.
Thank you. Number 8, discussion, presentation. Barbara Crawford. You would like to come up?
Well, good. It's brief. There's a group of parents and community members that would like to see a baseball team for the middle school. And because of the construction that's going on at the middle school, we think this is like the most appropriate time to make that request before fields are built and designated, so that we could say that we would like to see it there. It's kind of trending now for middle schools to get baseball teams. The northern counties are doing a good job of it. Some of our surrounding counties are doing it. There's sort of upstart programs, so it takes a while to get a team up and going. So, but we thought this was the appropriate time to request that.
Well, we had a request a couple of weeks ago from Ridgewood Middle School for a girls softball team.
Uh-huh.
When we got that request, the athletic director came.
Uh-huh.
Principal.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I know, and that's on me, I believe. I just thought, as a community member, I can mention it. I did talk with,
Oh, I'm all for keeping kids busy, believe me, I'm fine.
but I think maybe my protocol, I should have, like, gotten information from them. Mostly I was just wanting, like I said, to get the ball rolling, that perhaps this is the time, if we are going to do it, and what all we would need to do to get it approved.
Softball team they got to raise the first $5,000 for equipment too, so.
Yeah, it's always an
Yeah.
expensive
Yes.
venture,
so.
and it takes a while, so that's why we were saying now is
Yeah,
a
this
good
is-
time
this is
because
perfect time
the, because the school is being constructed in the fields and.
So I think to me, what you need to do is go back to your parents that you're talking to and get together with the athletic director at Summersville Middle School and the principal and,
Develop a plan.
develop a plan and bring it back to us.
Okay, I can do that.
Don't y'all agree?
Yeah, in that plan, if they could figure out their schedule, in other words, their travel, how far, what, you said some surrounding counties, and the cost of the equipment, the initial cost and stuff.
Are you wait,
I am Wade's grandmother.
Grandmother,
Yes,
wow. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yes. She's what?
Nothing.
Retired teacher?
I'm a retired working teacher. And it was interesting hearing all of this from the retired teacher's perspective also,
But
and seeing these things that are occurring.
I'm
Yeah.
all for keeping kids busy.
Yes,
The
yes,
more
yes.
things we have keeps them out of trouble.
So this was the initial step, and I delivered it, but we need more steps, is what I'm being told.
Yeah, you need a cost breakdown. You get a chance to talk to Mr. Little, he did a good job putting together.
So we would really need to develop a plan
Yes.
in order to even make this request.
Well, and you need to get get the principal, the athletic director, all those people involved, and
Yes.
I'm sure they'll.
Yes, I've spoken with Mrs.
But your
Grant.
point's well taken, as we discuss the developments of the fields up there next to the school system. That is something that probably will happen in the future.
And if we
Be
don't
thinking about it.
make the plan while the school is, before the fields are designated and developed, that's, I think that's our greatest concern, that then we will be too late to do it. But I will deliver the message and request to be put on the agenda again
Yeah,
sometime,
yeah.
or someone that
Yeah, get us some more
represents
information.
more information.
And everybody agree?
Okay. I was expecting as much, so that was good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for allowing me to be here.
You're welcome. Okay, number 9, action items. Discussion with possible action on determining which fields at the Glen Creek site are to be built.
That kind of goes with me, doesn't it? It's like perfect time.
Present what they have.
You could ask Chris, go over this, things right now.
Yeah, Chris, you come up at this time.
I made copies, passed this out to my board members, so they know what they saw.
Well, we haven't had a chance to look at it.
I just got it.
I know.
That's
You
good.
can't just throw things on us and expect us to make an informed decision.
Well, so the information that we provided to you, we're not looking for an approval on a change order or specific cost. We're looking for what the board's desire is to move forward with the fields at the site. So that information, we requested a cost proposal from M&H Construction, who's doing the site mass grading work. What we're looking for is to not do any work that would have to be either changed or modified depending on how the plans move forward with developing that site, with whatever school configuration that ends up being. So one of the things we're looking for is to make sure we're not doing things twice or undoing something that M&H is doing on the site. So there's a couple cost proposals that we've requested them to provide. That's what a copy that you currently have. They've only given us a rough draft of it at this point. We're still trying to hammer through some numbers with them, but I at least wanted you to have this information so you can help us determine which direction this needs to take. So what we've asked them to do is give a cost proposal for, the main thing was the deletion of the aggregate paving that goes underneath the asphalt and the separation fabric in that. Because right now that was a loop road and bus loops for a middle school and a high school and parking for a high school and a VOTEC center. Obviously, depending on the change of scope, there's a likelihood that that quantity of parking is not going to be required, and the bus loop and the drop-off configurations would have to be completely changed if it changes grade levels. So we're recommending not putting that gravel in and not doing that paving at this time, and seeding, not doing any topsoil, just seeding those areas so we get a base of grass, we prevent it from being a mud pit during the entire area, the time frame building up to the construction. The other aspect of that was a cost proposal for the fields. So we didn't know what the board's intent was, but we're looking at the options of what to do with some of those fields, because there are proposed 2 softball fields, 1 baseball field, 1 football stadium, 1 soccer field, and a half practice field at the end of the soccer field. Those are all proposed to be turf. And there's 1 additional field that's proposed to be grass field, and that is a football, soccer practice field. So one of the things, part of that package that's going on in construction right now, they're just prepping those fields for turf. The turf is not included in their contract package. All they're doing is putting subsurface drainage in. They're putting in concrete curbing, which you put around the fields, the perimeter of the fields, and you put the aggregate in that basically the turf gets base on. So what we asked the contractor is to include what those prices were so the board could at least see what kind of financial implication all of those fields are. Unfortunately, they don't have it broken down by field, and what we really would like to do is get it broken down to what the board would like to see, and then provide the pricing for that directed.
Which comes first? We almost have to understand the costing proposal before we can decide which field.
So in front of you is the overall summary of that cost proposal. So there's a series of, let me explain this part. There's a series of adds and there's a series of deducts. The front page of their cost proposal will be a summary of that cost. So to put it in plain terms for you, the deducts are the things we talked about. They're going to deduct the aggregate base, the sub-drainage base. They would delete the drainage structures, the concrete curbing for the areas that would be turf. And then you got the aggregate for underneath the parking areas. The adds would be, now we need to seed the parking area for temporary basis. Now that's going to need to be done kind of no matter which direction you go. Then their other aspect is if the fields are not turf, then they have a price to put topsoil on those fields and seed those fields. So there's an ad for that. Those prices are in there that just show the delta. This is just to give you a baseline understanding of what kind of cost implication that you're looking at.
See, I think the general public, I don't think they understand when we say fields, they're not turfed, there's no dugouts, there's no buildings of anything, and I don't think the general public understands that. They think we're going to eliminate all that stuff. Well, it's not in there to begin with.
So right now, we're just prepping fields for turf, and it's actually the outline of those fields. It's the aggregate base for what the turf area is going to be in the concrete. So it's no turf, it's no dugouts, it's no fencing. That's going to have to come in a future bid package, which was originally set up in the building bid packages, which were rejected and not moved forward with. So now it's a question of, do you still go forward with all the turf fields as planned, and still develop those later? Or do we look at a scale back of some of these fields being grass fields and some of these being turf fields, or some sort of combination thereof?
Yeah, we switched from a high school to a grade school to middle school. And I wouldn't even have caught the turf thing had Mr. Ferguson not noticed it last time, but it wasn't in the package. It costs $426,000 to do Nicholas County High School. And we're looking at, how many fields?
You're looking at 2 softball fields, 1 baseball field,
2 softball,
1 baseball.
And it cost how much for Nicholas County High School? For Nicholas Memorial? Is that what you're talking
He
about?
said 400 something.
Where'd you get that figure?
from Kevin.
Was that is the resurface?
That's a restore, that's probably a restore just the surface cost.
Yes.
The turf, and usually there are a lot more than that, if you put everything together.
Yeah, that's why I was a little bit into that. Yeah. I thought that was cheap.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was, yeah.
That was the returf, the drainage and everything was already in there.
Yep. Chris, was the million?
Yeah, you're right, it is cheap. I mean, that would be cheap, but, okay. Football, track, soccer, 2 softball, 1 baseball.
Baseball, 2 softball, track, soccer, and there's a half practice. Yeah,
Practice.
there's a half, the soccer field is basically a field and a half long of turf. So it's a field and a half. And then the adjacent football, soccer field, there's a practice field that's grass. That's really the only field that's planned to be
Well, I
grass.
guess the question in my mind is, what would you do with that area? We spent $15 million grading it, graveling, draining it, and you're just going to put a school there and nothing else around it?
No, that's not what we're suggesting.
Well, I know that's not what you're suggesting, but, so we're going to have to have, we're going to have some fields. It's a middle school, and the middle school comes with fields. So it's a question maybe what fields you can come up with, but in my opinion, looking long-term down the road, and it's not a Richwood thing versus Summersville thing, it's not. Well, I'd be glad to try to support Richwood in every way I can. And I have in the past, and I'll continue to do that. It's what you've got a piece of property and what you're going to do with that property down the road. And really not to have the contractor that's already bid to go ahead and do a lot of that work, unless you're going to change it from turf to grass. And then there is a lot of merit as far as, not doing the gravel and stuff and moving it
That's
to
my
grass.
only concern. I don't know how we're gonna pay for the turf for all that.
So in the building package that was bid, the fit out and completion of those fields just for the turf aspect of it, and I guess we had the dugouts,
Concessions, all those buildings.
yeah, well, not necessarily all of those buildings, but if I look at the turfing of the fields, fencing, final prep, some of those areas, you're in the neighborhood of $7 million.
And then,
That would be turfing everything that was planned to be turfed and have those as final fields with.
and then they told us that turf lasts about 10 years, right? I mean, that's what they told us when they said we need new turf at Nicholas County High
Well, that depends
School.
on
It's
how
been
much
there 10
traffic.
years, and it's used up, and we need new.
The only thing is, if you don't turf it, then you mow it. So that's an expense too.
Yeah, right.
So you have to treat it and all that, so.
But I'd like to see, like they've done here, I'd like to see a cost proposal that compares the upkeep of turf versus the upkeep of grass. And we have to remember that we're putting in $10,000 a year to account for deterioration, to accumulate money in 10 years to redo the turf. And all these fields,
And I do want to make one point. The original turf on the Nicholas County High School Memorial Stadium, and that stadium was built by, before I ever came here, was built by entrepreneurs in the area, and that turfing project was $650,000, which the board only participated at a level about 25,000, if I remember, it might have been a little bit higher.
Right.
So I guess my point is, yeah, you've had to come in and replace it, and I was a part of that. And we told them to accrue money, put it aside, every year. So, 25,000 years is the number that stuck in my mind. And they said it would only last 7 to 8 years, and we end up using that field 14 or 15 years. The turf has a purpose. Most schools are going to turf if you do the long-term cost analysis, but a lot depends on how you want to do
The
it.
study Kevin did on the two fields, the Richwood Field and the Summersville Field, 10 years, over a 10-year period, the Richwood Field cost the board $1 million just to keep up. And the turf field was $500,000. So,
But you had an initial big
yeah, you got the
bigger
initial
cost.
cost,
You had a bigger
but you don't have
cost.
to worry about,
But I guess my question was, this thing was designed with all these fields. But how was the board going to pay for them initially? Just out of the 177 million?
Yeah.
And just now being eaten up by inflation?
Yes.
Right.
what's that summary sheet there, delete for this? That's for the turf stone, $1 million?
Yes, that's the delete.
Yeah,
And then
but
there's-
if you delete that, then you're gonna put soil on it,
You're
which is
gonna
gonna
put
cost you that much too, probably.
Well,
So what-
there's an ad sheet in there.
So what they're saying is you're gonna save $680,000.
But you're still going to put something on it, won't you?
Well, that you're right here.
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
And that's what you're gonna save. I don't think we should delete them all. I just worry about how we're gonna turf them all.
So,
Right.
so there is the other possibility to look at getting these prepped for turf later on and doing that as part of your building package that goes on that site. And just not have the contractor put all of that in at this point in time, and it gives you the flexibility to do some of it later. I understand that your comment is it's already in the bid and they have that work to do, but I also understand yours of, you gotta figure out,
Well, I just
because if you don't turf them, you have aggregate gravel fields.
And you know, you
And
think
we have to
about,
know that before they do their work. I mean, we have to narrow it down.
We're at a point where we either need to take those out of the contractor, the current contractor, or we need to either scale it back where it gives you the ability to make the decision a little bit later. We just need to figure out what's going to be the best way to move forward with those.
But if we make the decision later, then these contractors are out, right?
Yeah, but you'll have another contractor on that site that's going to have
We'd
equipment.
have to rebid and get another contractor, or would it be
Well,
included?
we could make it part of the building. The next building that's bid to go on that, we could make the field work part of that package. You're gonna already have to bid that work anyway.
you're not gonna get the gravel for this price.
Well, no,
On the
because
next
the
bid.
gravel at that price was when it was bid a couple years ago, and now it is tremendously different now, as you're well aware. That's so that's the question is.
What's your concern, though, I'm just curious again, I was on that one construction call. What's your concern about going ahead and putting the drainage and all the gravel in? If you, down the road, want to try to turf it or whatever, you were saying, I think somebody was saying there would be a hole or grass would be growing up through the gravel, or, I mean.
You'll have to, once that's done, the maintenance will have, if turf's not laid on it immediately, you're gonna have to maintain those gravel areas until turf is laid on it, and you're gonna have maintenance costs.
Yeah, I'm just not, and I may be wrong, and I'm just not buying into the concept that would cost a lot of money, and then if you could get the turf down the road, you would prepare, it would be a lot less cost to prepare it at that point, to put the turf down.
I can appreciate that, but having stood before this board for the last couple of years, I have to be very prudent with your all's money.
I want you to do it.
And because there's some people that are gonna hold
But
me
if you're
accountable.
going to eventually put them in, if you're going to eventually find a way to put them in,
And again, this is not my decision to make, but one of the things that we want to just bring this to your point is where we are with current costs. And if we proceed with them, I don't want this board to go, wait, we're going to have to now turf all these fields. And I don't want to force your hand into that
But
decision.
you would not have to do that, correct?
Well, what would happen is that those gravel beds would fill up with silt. Over how many years you're going to sit and wait on this to happen, and the longer you wait, the worse that gets. If you have to rip all that out, you're going to redo everything this contractor's doing. We're just trying to be cautious, because what we don't want to do is have a bunch of money sitting out there that could be put in the building.
Well, the first proposal we looked at, though, I mean, and I know things change or whatever, but the first proposal we looked at, we went to a K through 8 versus a 6 through 8 and a K through 5, and it saved us $7 million. First proposal was 91 million, and we had 97. But now I'm almost getting the feel that you don't think the 97 is going to be enough just to build the school.
We won't know till we get a design, or the program figured out with how many square feet, what we're actually building. But that's,
You're not pulling that off the shelf, are you?
it can't come off the shelf.
That's what we were told.
The other alternative is that it's not in that cost, is right now the contractor has some money to put topsoil to do grass fields. But they're on the pavement areas, they're pulling the gravel aggregate off, and we're just hydroseeding straight down to the subbase, not putting topsoil, just trying to get grass to grow so we don't get in a massive mud pile. The other option would be to go in the field areas, not put a bunch of topsoil down, and just seed those for a temporary basis, and then get to the building construction, and you either are putting topsoil in some of the fields and grassing them, or you're going to put aggregate down with drainage and curbing, and you're going to turf some of those fields. It would give you the ability to make that decision later. It's a large number, and I'm not doing my job if I don't bring it to your attention.
It's a big credit.
You know, just to put it in perspective, we have over $500,000 of allowances on that project that remain unused, and we're closing down that project, getting very close to the end. That money comes back to you all.
You're talking about the grading project.
Yes, so that means that even with the change order, we had to slope the building pad, add some topsoil, add some drainage. That was a pretty large number to do that. At the end of the day, you're still going to see a net credit. So at the end of M&H's contract, whether you take this deduction or not, you're going to pay less than the bid price you received on bid day. You're going to get money back.
Whether you take
Whether you take this or not, you're going to get money back. Yeah.
And if we do this, we're gonna get $680,000.
On top of the allowances.
On top of the allowances coming back close to $1 million.
I hate to use this term, or going to use this term, because I hate this term, but out of all due respect, and I hate that term because something's coming. I just don't understand why we can't get better cost estimates. It seems to me like since I've been here that the estimates it's like a moving shot. Now, I understand from your all standpoint that you need to know what we're going to build. But, I was told first that grade schools and elementary schools, middle schools were cheaper than high school. That's one reason we were not going to be able to do the high school. But now, and that was $500 a foot, and they said elementary was $350. I can go back and look at my notes. And I think the Hoover project was less than that. But we're at $500, we're going to eat all the money off.
Keep in mind, Hoover was built prior to COVID, was bid prior to COVID.
Yeah.
Prior to all that inflation.
And they
That was
went
bid
over.
prior to that.
Well, but still, your statement was it's 300. It's cheaper to build. Is the statement it's cheaper to build an elementary school and a middle school cheaper than a high school?
Yes.
That's still valid.
Yes, 100%.
So what would a high school cost now? $700 a foot?
It could cost probably $550. We had bids on 2 elementary schools recently that were $500.
And so $500 figure is based upon your experience with what's in the market.
What in the high school makes it, I know you got labs,
So the gymnasiums are bigger. So when you go to high school, you got science labs, which you don't have those level of labs in middle school, and you don't have any of that in elementary school except for a STEAM type of space.
right?
You have an auditorium in most high schools, which you do in this one that we designed. That is a very expensive space that you don't have. There's a handful of other spaces, they're very small, but those are probably the two right off the top.
Auditoriums and gyms and
Yeah,
labs.
the technology's still the same. Most of that's the same. Most educational spaces are the same. But it's your science laboratories, there's more of those, and they start to creep up in cost. You have parking for high school students, which you don't in middle school, and then all of a sudden, that's got a cost. That's more land, that has a cost. So there's a few things when you get into high school, those costs. And in SBA's funding formula, if you ever look at it, elementaries cost less than middles, and middles cost less than highs, and those are the reasons for those, is the type of spaces. But I want to come back to your question, and all due respect. You can tell me what fuel prices will be 24 months from now. I can tell you 100% what the buildings will cost.
Let me ask you
That's
another question. This $7 or $8 million we spent on architects' fees and stuff, is that just gone now? In other words, we're going to have to start a whole new process?
You start a whole new process.
That building never came to fruition, never moved forward. Now you have to start back over from scratch.
And that's not your all's fault.
But y'all's also paying Skanska too. I mean,
Everything runs through us, so all those fees aren't just architects.
No, I understand.
There's like 10 people that are 10 companies that rely on me to pay.
Right.
So it's a
Well,
trickle
and
down
I
effect.
know a lot of times, you hear it's all, ZM in, but
Yep.
like you said, the cost of everything.
We get monthly reports from a couple different national firms. that
Including
Skanska.
reports.
It shows the uprise on everything on the cost. It leveled off for a little while, then it kind of spiked back up a little bit. It still depends on supply and demand of certain materials. Electrical's still really expensive and still really long lead items.
And we do have the advantage of, due to the size of the firm and how active we are in the education market, not just here in West Virginia, but in Virginia. We have numbers on a monthly basis to show where things are coming in on a bid price, where things are kind of falling, so we're able to track a lot of that data on our own too.
So what you're all, almost summarizing, back up a little bit, what you're all needing from us is a decision on what to do in the fields based upon a $600 and some thousand credit plus the $500,000 you're going to get regardless, so it'd be around $1 million.
Or something in between. I mean, I'm not trying to dictate what you all want to do with those fields.
But this is being forced by the issue because the contractor's getting ready to leave or finish his contract.
We just need to-
Now we've got to make it.
Before he does this work, if any of those fields are not going to be turf, I don't want to pay him to prep them for turf if they're not going to be, and I want to save your money so that you can use it as you see fit.
It sounds like
That's the only goal.
Because we don't know what costs are going to be in May. That's what we were told that we had to.
It's going to be so long until we get them turfed.
That's my concern, but I also share you're not going to get aggregate
You're
the
not
next
gonna get the
go around
price
at
of
this
that
price either.
We're going to look back on that 5 years and say, well, I wish, we need to turf that now, and you would say, I wish I did that.
So maybe maybe one of the things to consider as a recommendation is to find the sweet spot, and do you do all of those fields now, or do you just prep some of those fields?
It's kind of hard to determine if we don't know what the total cost of the project's going to be, how much of that $97 million you're going to have.
Well, you look at it that way, you can look at it like, here's what we want. We need to design a project to fit this budget. That's what we try to do every time. We have to have a budget. And we don't want to say sky's the limit, because it's not. So if we want to build $3 million worth of fields instead of 7, we can give our best estimate on trying to go and design whatever school we need to design, whichever scenario that you all want to do.
And it also depends, you know, how many students we're talking about. You're talking K-8, but is it 3 elementary schools worth of K-8? Is it 2?
It's 3.
Is it 3?
It's 3. I got the numbers from Chris today.
Over 1,000 students.
Yeah, but they'll be different, because you've got the elementary side and you've got middle, and you want to keep all that separate.
Like softball, safety issues, I mean, you've played on AstroTurf. What's better, grass or AstroTurf, in your opinion?
My opinion, I'm gonna stick with my daughter. I'm sitting here listening to all this and dealing with the AstroTurf and everything, there's no maintenance. If you have a regular field, the coach is taking care of the field. It's no one else taking care of the field. But as for playing, my daughter, she said she would rather play on dirt. And that's the way she was raised, that's what she played on. But she also agreed with me, where I said, there's no maintenance. Really and truly, there's not. The coach doesn't have to go out and put the lines down. He doesn't have to get the bases out. He doesn't have to go and do anything. He or she can, you know, be with the kids. And that would make a big difference.
You know what you also need to look at, excuse me, go ahead.
And as for, you talked about so many, I hope I can speak. I'm sitting here listening to this because you're saying so many fields have to be, is projected, proposed. Why? Why would you need so many fields to do that? And I'm just saying this to you, why? I mean, I have no idea.
High school.
I have no idea why so many.
Two schools played there at one time.
Right,
So.
and I mean, and I'm just saying this because last week I went up to Fairmont, watched the football game. They have their football field and softball field right there and soccer field in one area.
That's why we want to build them in one area.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just right there. There was three fields in just, I mean, just right
Did
there.
y'all redesign that where they're all on that one end? You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
Well, I'm just saying, because you know, you
I'm
have
just
two
saying
baseball, two softball
you
here,
can get the amount of
soccer,
you
football
can
on
get
the other
what you
side.
need. If you said, if you could get and take care of every sport that you have, if you just think about it. And I mean, I'm just gonna say it.
Well, you
Rich was not going. I mean, we got two fields in one little area, 7 acres, and it's not even owned by the board. It's owned by the city. It's in the flood zone. Where do we go? We're not going to get nothing. We haven't been sitting to get a new field. It wasn't proposed. We don't have. If you don't go and break it down, there's a hard area. I mean, you can't find an area to get football.
Yeah.
So you all, I mean, you're doing good. I mean, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But I'm sitting here thinking, man, you're needing 6 or 7 fields for what? And that's all I'm, because if you can't practice on one field and play on another field, something's wrong. I've been around long enough to know that, you know, you can take one field and play a lot of games on one field and do a lot of practice on one field. I hope you get what you want and what you need.
That's
what you want.
That's what the committee wanted, is that many fields. That's how we
Yeah,
ended up,
it
because we
really-
got a high school, middle school situation.
Right.
Another way to look at it is, you might want turf, you might look at where your students play, what do they have? What does your competition have?
Right.
Because you don't want to give your kids an unfair advantage by having grass if everybody's playing on turf everywhere they go.
I mean, this school,
It's different.
teams have AstroTurf at middle school level. I mean, that we play.
It's rare.
Yeah, but hey, I want the best for our kids.
Right.
I don't know. I've got a grandson in soccer, and we go to Spencer, we go to Roane County, we go, and they're turf.
Yeah. Well, they're used to playing them out here at Nichols County High School too, so.
Well, what we may have to do is do less fields, but prep them for turf.
Yeah, I think that's where you're going to end up, and then the question is field. You got a middle school football program, you got a middle school soccer program, you got a middle school softball program, and you've got a request for a middle school baseball program.
Yes.
You don't need 2 softball fields, because that was probably designed for the high school and middle school. Now you just have a middle school. And I don't know if you need that half practice field or the grass field or whatever. I would not think you would need that. But again, just so the public understands, if you decide in the future you need more, it's going to cost you more. You have an opportunity now, but we don't know if we can raise that money, how much the community wants to put in like they did before. Those are questions that it's going to be hard to answer, and you got to figure out what this contractor's going to do.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear from the treasurer. Now, personally, I'd like to hear from our treasurer how much it costs to maintain the grass field at Richwood per year, and how much it costs to maintain the turf field at Nicholas County High. I'd like to compare grass to turf.
That's what Kevin did a year or so ago, those numbers I stated. It was twice as much grass as it was turf.
That was projection. I want actual numbers.
No, that was actual numbers. That was what it cost.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr.
Minister. We pay someone to maintain the field, don't we? The grass field, don't we pay someone to maintain the field? I know the coaches have to help.
There's a lot of volunteers to do that, but yes, there is a maintenance program.
But don't we have the maintenance person?
One at the football field, that's.
He does an excellent job.
He's taking care of the football field, and sometimes, and he'll come down and mow the grass.
Yeah.
And that's easy.
And I know you all have to help. And,
Yeah, I mean,
and I've been up there, and seen track going on, football, middle school, high school football going on. All the little itty bitty teams are in the cities lot across the road.
Actually,
they use it all.
That's still our law.
Bruce, are you considering though if turf is better or whatever? And I've sat through all those meetings. It's not just cost; it's safety. Are you proposing that we turf over in Richwood versus grass, or are you proposing it's grass here versus turf? I'm a little confused about what you're thinking about.
I'm not proposing either. I just want to know what it costs, one compared to the other.
The cost, if you listen to demonstrations, unless they've changed, they cost about the same over a long-term period. The turfs are considered to be safer for like football and stuff. Softball raises a good question in baseball because the ball gets to you a little quicker where the grass doesn't slow it up in the turf. But they'll tell you the cost is basically the same.
Yeah, but in about 10 years, don't you have to replace it?
Yeah, you got to factor that in.
But you're still mowing the grass.
Yeah, but it's still about the same. They will tell you that turf and grass basically are about the same cost over a 10 or 15-year period.
They not only mow that grass, but it's treated too. It's treated, it's not cheap.
Yeah, you got to fertilize it.
And Richwood Field's one of the best in the state.
Yeah, Paul, you all done a tremendous job over there.
And then what we would be doing is committing future boards to putting away $10,000 a year for each field, and that would only amount to $100,000. And you told me it wasn't 400, it was 600,000 for the.
Oh, that's original. It was for it was, what was it? 430, 440.
So even at the most, you're only saving up $100,000 for what, 600,000, 700,000 for a field like that? I quit. I mean, I'm shut up. Well, it boggles my mind.
Well, I'm going to go back to the complete education system. Has extracurricular activities, whether it's band, whether it's soccer, football, and I believe this board is charged with the responsibility of giving a complete education system academically and athletically. And that's just my opinion. Obviously, I'm on a 5-year or whatever. So I think we need to give some directions to the architects. I think I understand what they're saying on the number of fields that we need.
Well, we've got to make a decision on this tonight because we tabled it once, and we have to legally take care of it tonight.
As far as which fields?
Yes.
But we don't have to decide on AstroTurf or grass, right?
Sorta. I mean, you got to decide.
You're gonna prep them for it.
Prep them.
Yeah, if Carson's going to finish his contract, if the M&A's going to finish their contract, and they're getting out of there, they need to know whether we're going to prepare for a grass field, turf field, or something in the future.
I mean,
So
I
his
like,
summary, what we need
How
to do.
soon does he have to know? He's here, right?
Well, the architects and stuff will direct Carson on what the board decides, and we can either take the credit now, pay me now, pay me later, whatever you do, but I personally am for one softball field, one football field, and one soccer field,
okay.
at a minimum. Where the baseball comes down the road, I don't know, but I think you need one middle school softball field, one soccer field, and one football field at a minimum.
That's for turf, but we will have those other.
Now, I'm just talking about fields, then we can talk about whether it's turf or grass. I'm
Right, that's
saying the number
turf,
of
grass.
fields.
Yeah, for prep for turf. Those three.
Well, the
But you
track
have-
field will be on the football field, right?
The track will be around the football field.
But there are other spaces there under that contract that were prepared for some kind of field.
But I personally believe if the board would commit to that and find the funds for that, that the community may want to go deeper.
Yeah, and prepare some
But I
kind of
think the
field.
community's going to look to the board to give the basics of what it's charged to do. So it would be nice for me to be able to talk to some of the community leaders, and I could probably get a feel, I can't do it tonight, of whether is the community going to chip in?
Are they gonna play soccer on the football stadium, or are they gonna play soccer on the field? There's not room for, this don't look like there's room.
No, it's a great question. It's a great
You
question.
know.
Right now, they're practicing with no field,
Right.
and they share the field with the football team now, so are they going to play on that field?
And that's another thing.
I think they still need a practice field.
If they have their own field, is Nicholas County Memorial Park, is it going to last longer since there's less people on it?
In theory, your turf will last.
Right.
Yeah, in
So,
theory.
I'm playing devil's advocate, I know.
So one of the discussions of why there is a grass, why not all the fields are turf, because I've been asked this, why is there one field that's grass? So the half practice field and part of the soccer field, there was discussions about being able to use it for practice, where it's not muddy, it's not a mess. But the one thing about the grass practice field is, depending on the coaching staff, some coaches would like to have them practice on grass, depending on where they're going to go play. But you could also practice some on the grass and save the life of your turf. That would also be part of the advantage of doing that. So that was some of the decision making the committee had going into why there were so many fields and why there was a grass field. It was to provide a little bit of longevity for some of the turf fields. It would also give coaches the ability to practice on grass if they were getting ready for a game.
I'd like to kind of hear from the educating side of it too. Parents or Ellen tonight, I guess the question is how important is it to the educational system, or maybe it's not?
Well, it's important to me, I mean,
I play, everybody knows I play, it's
but,
important to me too.
like I said, the band, it's middle school band now, not high school. So I don't know if they practice after school or not, do they?
They practice on the high school baseball field, I think, right?
Richwood band practices on the Richwood football field like everything else.
Also understand this. If you decide to go one way and do more in grass than turf, it doesn't mean that you can't make those turf later. Will it cost a little bit more? Yes. But will you have the upfront cost right now? No. So It doesn't mean that it's set in stone forever and you can't do a grass field to turf, or you can't take a turf back to grass field. It happens.
Yeah, well, we did that at Nichols Stadium. It was a grass field for years. It was a nice stadium.
So it's not, so I just want to, it's not a decision forever. It can be changed through time.
But then you will have to gravel and drain and everything if you convert the grass to the turf at that point. You will have to do it.
I'm just worried that if we prep them for turf, all of them for turf right now, that like Dave said, that they're gonna fill full of silt, and the grass will start growing, and then we got a mess.
That's if you can't afford to do it when you build the building out for bid. If you wait several years down the road, I would imagine that's full up with silt, and build that, fill up with, it'll be awful.
If you prep them from turf now and move forward with the building project
You
next,
think we're okay?
yeah, I would not be concerned with them sitting out for 12 months. If they start sitting out 24 months, it becomes a different issue.
Can I ask a question? Would it cost more to prep them for turf now and turn into a grass field later, or have a grass field now and prep it for turf later?
I would think it would be grass field now or prep it for turf later.
But we've already paid for prepping for turf now, you know.
Plus you got all the drainage you'd have to put in later, which is.
I think the question, we may be looking at it a little bit wrong too. Maybe the question for the board is, and it's hard to do, but if you want to use, if you've got the potential of using all the money toward the school itself, how much, and that's FEMA money, how much is this board willing to commit? And then they can tell you what you can build. Are you willing to commit $3 million or $5 million or $10 million or $1 million or nothing?
And this board
Or nothing.
How much can we afford?
Build the school first and we'll know.
Well,
How much is it going to take?
well, when we talked when we were short, if I remember the figures correctly, when we talked when we were short, we could put $10 million in and borrow another 10 or 20 when we were trying to get to the 27 million or something. So again, you're going to come back to this board, what we want to spend and where we want to spend it, but we were, and you're right, what you can afford, but we had, if I remember right, we had $10 million, and we could borrow another, Christian, you want to help me with that?
And if we did that, though, that is getting rid of
That's cutting.
any.
What's it say?
And how much money was it that you had to put in? I wasn't for that, I just wanted to know how much it was.
They threw out a couple of different numbers trying to decide what that could be. I think they said it could be as much as 10. But then we talked to our auditor, and I think that was just not really very well advised.
Well, and there is a little bit of budget shortfall that you're all drawing into right now, correct?
And the thing of it is, if we do that, we're going to have to cut a bunch of personnel.
Well,
It bankrupts the system.
well, wait there. We're going to go back to the original question though, but how much can you afford? If you can't afford anything, then we're wasting our time. We tell them to take the credit and go on. How much is, but if he's going to use if there's a potential of using the whole $97 million for the bricks and mortar and parking lots of the schools and nothing fulfills, then the board's going to have to make a decision.
Well, and we got to remember, we're going to have to pay the new cost for ZMMs, cans and all that out of our own money.
That's right.
So we don't have that $10 million.
One way to look at this too is that if you were building this scratch, say it's not flood money, it's just a brand new middle school, you would probably not be building any fields. If this was an SDA project,
6,200 standards.
unless you pay for it yourself, they would not fund any fields at all. They don't do stadiums, they don't do football fields, they don't do soccer fields, baseball, any of that.
Gymnasiums are only included because they're part of the curriculum.
It's part of PE.
As a 15-year SBA employee.
So you keep that in mind. I mean, if you were building a new middle school, you wouldn't have all the fields that we have currently. you might want to build a football field, a soccer field, softball.
And I agree with you if we were doing that, but obviously we've got to deal with what we're dealing with. And FEMA seems to be stuck on that we cannot move the site. If we had a clean slate, we might not be building out there and using all that land, but we've already spent all that money. And FEMA seems to, in the communications, unless I read them wrong, they seem to be very interested in our athletic
They
fields.
asked us about those fields on the phone call.
I mean, is that fair statement?
You're right.
For community use.
But you're right, if it's SBA,
I
it's not.
don't think they'd be necessarily looked down if you didn't build all of those fields, because
No,
you
I
want
don't
to build the building. I think if you inserted, like you said, the baseball or the softball, soccer, and football, you stick with that. And if you want to turf it, fine. If you don't want to turf it, that's fine too. But I think if you stick with that, I think you're safe. Now, as the site is graded, it's graded for all the other fields. You have spots for all those other fields. They're already designed. It's laid out there. So all you really need to do is keep that in mind for future reference if you ever wanted to add a softball.
So we could convert those to grass,
Yes.
figure out the ones you're going to turf, and then you still have the flexibility in the future.
Yeah, the site and the grading is all there. The fields are there. You wouldn't have to cut the number of fields down. You could also, if you decided you only need one softball, you have an area that's going to house a second softball field if you determine you needed that later.
And those areas could be used for practice as well.
There's some use for anything.
100%.
But this cost savings we're looking at is to cut all the fields. He didn't break it down.
He didn't, but we can have him, and that's the direction that I need, is I just need to work with Carson to determine what that is and bring back to you a final number. We just want to make sure we're doing the board's will.
Yeah, that savings is not a whole lot compared to the big picture. And if you have to come back and redo that, it's going to be a lot more.
It is not, but I also want to make sure we understand that turfing those fields is a cost that hasn't been incurred yet.
Yeah, if you say I'm going to turf everything.
But if you don't have the money to turf, don't spend the money to
We've already spent that money though to have it done.
But you'll have the fields, the other
Yeah.
thing.
Yes.
You got the space.
We'll have the fields in those buildings.
Mr. President, where do you want to go with this?
Chip, I'm going to apologize in advance.
Well, you can poll the board, you can do whatever, but if they have to have a decision tonight.
Well, I think the first thing we need to look at is which fields do we definitely want to keep? Because I think some of them need to be grassed.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with
Yeah, it's not a matter of keeping. I think they're there.
I mean, they're there,
Yeah.
but
It's which ones we're going to turf.
which
Which ones
ones
you
we're
want to
going to
develop?
prepare to turf?
That's it, develop. Which ones you want to
that.
develop?
You want to develop now, use now.
And, I'm a football guy, so I'm going to say football.
Well, we have football, baseball, and soccer.
Well, the middle school presently does not have a baseball. Middle school has a
softball.
softball. They have a softball,
Yeah.
a soccer, and a football program at the middle school level. That's what's there now. And keep in mind, we are going to have to come up with some money for some, not be material, maybe material for some elementary school playground equipment and stuff like that,
Is there a difference? Now, I'm going to get my sports ignorance here. Is there a difference between a softball field and a baseball field?
Yeah, big size.
Softball?
Smaller.
It doesn't. How big is softball field?
200 feet.
200 feet, baseball's 400?
300.
300?
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Because they play on the same field.
Beside each other, but not the same one.
Okay. Well, I told you I was going to show my ignorance.
That's a good question. Some fields do both because they move the bases in and stuff, and they'll move the fence in. You can, in theory, do that. But most times, there's a big difference between those two fields.
The two fields we have there at Frank Park, they're right beside each other. It comes up about, I think it was 4.5, 5 acres, is what it takes. They're tight.
Watch a baseball game,
Baseball,
softball.
softball,
Or
right.
foul
Games
ball.
at once, huh?
Get hit by a foul ball.
I'm gonna make
Okay,
a,
you
I'm
got
gonna make
football.
a suggestion.
Okay. That's what I've been waiting
This
for.
is just a suggestion. I'm gonna say turf the football field, turf the soccer field, and have a baseball and a softball, a baseball field and a softball field grass. Now, that's my suggestion.
What about the half field? The soccer field.
Right.
It's gonna be grass anyway, so it's, I mean, it's there.
Yeah.
It'll be a grassy area. for lack of a-
And if they wanna line it, they can line it.
Well, they have a half field on the end of that soccer field.
Yeah, they said the soccer field would be 1.5. You gonna turf it all, or you just gonna turf one part and leave the half grass?
Originally, it was just turf all.
Why is that 1.5?
Why is it a half?
Yeah.
It allowed you to have high school and middle school soccer practice at the same time. You could have one of the fields, or you could use the grass field.
So.
That was just, that was a committee decision to go to the half field.
Since the high
The
school-
room was there.
High school's not there, so do away with that half field, that'd save you some money and, but now that's just my opinion.
So you're saying
I'm saying-
grass softball, grass baseball, turf football, turf soccer. And then prepare everything else to be developed down the road if we have to come back in and
Well-
we'd have the area to do it. Everything else be grass, basically.
Yeah.
Everything else is practice, fields, and
Yeah,
playgrounds
yeah.
and stuff
Yeah,
like
if
that.
somebody wants to strike it off, you can.
It'll all be grass.
It'll just be grass. I'm in support of that proposal at this time, knowing that if the community desires and has to raise the money and wants to go, you have the areas to do it, and you come back in at that time and develop it. It'll be interesting whether we have enough money to even do that. So what we need,
That,
what we're
that
going
football field includes a track around it, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. That pretty well covers all the sports.
Yeah, that's right.
What about like shot put and discus and all that?
They do that on the field.
I think it's all over.
On the grass field of it,
It's in the end zone, that'll be on
Okay.
the turf area.
Got 80-some acres, they can surely throw a shot and hit it somewhere.
So, somebody make a motion.
I will make that motion.
And your motion is?
The motion is that we have, well, first of all, our motion is to give the architect's direction, go back with Carson and figure out what kind of credit we're going to do, under the presumption that we are going to turf the football field and track area. We are going to cut out the extra field and just build a soccer field and turf it. That we are going to build a softball field and grass it. And that we're going to build a baseball field and grass it.
Everything else will just be grass.
Yeah, we'll leave the other fields. They'll be graded in grass so that they can be a field, and you do not have to do additional work.
So basically, you're cutting out the gravel in preparation for turf. There'll still be areas that you'll be able to use as grass fields if you want to develop them pretty cheap.
So, Kim, did you get that motion? Do we have a second?
Testing me.
Do we have a second?
second.
Second by Mr. Green. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh,
Y'all
thank
be
you all.
safe. Okay, action item B, discussion with possible action on the 60-day extension for the Glade Creek construction milestones.
Now, what, is that What's that deal with it?
That's just to extend the milestone.
The time that we have to do our plans.
Yeah. And
It
we-
was
That's not including growing
No.
ZMM's work.
No, this is, basically what this is for us, so that we can wait on all this other stuff to happen before,
The deadline.
right. We're just extending the deadlines.
This is something to go to FEMA.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And this is, I mean, I don't know how many times Chris, do you know how many times they've done this? I mean, we've had several extensions,
Yeah.
Probably at least 4 or 5.
so,
And they've agreed, when we was on our phone calls, they said it was exponential circumstances, they agreed that they was going to extend whatever we needed.
right. Thank you. Okay, action item C, discussion with possible action on the installation dates for the old main gym floor, April and May 2024.
That's down here.
It's not,
Where are you looking?
it's on the action items.
It's on the paper. It's not on the,
It's not on the computer.
that's for the,
Yeah, it's on C.
the old gym here on the hill.
Yeah,
Right, yeah. That'll be,
that drives me crazy. I always pray I won't say something stupid. The previous board gave that to the city, then rented it back for $4,000 a year,
Yeah, but
and
FEMA,
now they own it, and we're gonna make repairs.
no,
Huh?
no, we're not repairing it. All there, we have a lease with them through FEMA. FEMA's paying that lease so that those kids have a place to practice, okay? That lease has to be year-round. All they're doing is saying that they're going to replace the floor, and it's going to take a couple months, and we're not going to be able to use it. Am I correct?
The city's.
We're not paying for it.
No, we're not paying for it, so just to kind of explain what's going on with it. I think this has been going on for a couple of years. Here, I'm not sure how many months ago it was. I know we have been working pretty closely with the city of Summersville and Mayor Schaefer. Mayor Schaefer's been pushing for a couple of years to get that floor replaced. The old main gym, it is kind of I think a beacon of our community as far as youth sports. Got a bitty basketball program that goes on there. A lot of people have used that. Once it goes back to the city, I'm sure the youth will continue to use it. But I know the city has really they've been real big advocates and been pushing to get a new floor down in there. I think they were going to do it last summer, it's been pushed back. We finally got a price to do it, the city's paying for it. And so really, when I spoke with Mayor Schaefer and we met, he just wanted me to bring it to the board and run it by you all so we could kind of nail down that time frame. I spoke with everybody that uses it, spoke with the Biddy League and City League officials, spoke with the principal and athletic director of middle school, and we kind of determined that April and May window would probably be the best time, because it's going to be shut down. Nobody will be able to use it during the demolition and installation of the floor.
Why didn't they do it this summer? Because I was under understanding it was going to happen this summer.
I think there were some other. I don't know if it's a fair question for me. If this is out of my realm.
I can
Yeah,
answer
that may be. Well, I will say that I
I'm just
think it
curious.
took a little longer than expected to get some of the estimates back.
Oh, okay.
And I think they were looking at some different flooring options, and they got some different results than what they anticipated.
So since we have a lease with FEMA, we have to make a decision to, during that lease period, give the city the time to shut that building down to make a repairs. And you're all suggesting April, May.
Yeah, we're suggesting April, May. That shouldn't interfere with anybody. That gets it over with before that, which I know they're moving away from the 3-week window for sports, but that gets away from that June, July area, and that's kind of a dead time anyways. But just want to make sure that that's okay with the
How
board.
about the Alternative Learning Center? Weren't they using the gym?
They did last year. It's my understanding that they won't have that same play time this year.
Okay.
So they won't, I spoke, I did
Okay.
speak.
I was just making, because it's during the school year.
But we pay all 12 months, right?
We do pay, part of that agreement is, and I don't know exactly what the agreement is, I don't know if there's a written agreement, but I do know that we do pay a lease, a monthly lease, I believe. I don't think we have done that the entire time. I think that's fairly new. Somebody might be able to back me, maybe we just started last year.
We did, it was just less. I think we only paid less than $1,000 a month or something for several years there. And then they got their.
That's an expensive floor. If the city's willing to pay that cost, I think you ought to cooperate with them. And give them the time, I think that's a no-brainer.
They just put a new roof, the city just paid for a new roof to be put on there too.
Yeah, the city just put a new roof on it. We kind of share some of the maintenance on it. The major expenses, the city, I mean, like they just put a new roof. They're going to put a brand new floor down. That floor is long overdue to be replaced. That's probably, I don't know, somebody.
It's the original.
It's the original floor.
No, it's the original floor. I played my last high school basketball game. I beat the Lewis County, or we would have gone to the state tournament. Not that I hold a grudge. No, but I beat 1 point at the buzzer by Lewis County.
Yeah, they've been talking about this since last year.
And I'm old, so
This is
it's
going
an
into
old
2 years. Yeah, about the floor.
Yeah, I think this has been something that has been long overdue on the list of things to do. And I think we're finally going to see it happen. And so I think it's an exciting thing for the community. Not just going to be the wood floor, but the design on it. I think it'll be a little more updated, and we'll also have some. We'll have it set up to where the courts can run side to side, and it'll open up a few more opportunities for our middle school programs there too, because they're a little limited on what they can do on that floor now. And I don't know how safe it is to have that floor down with the plywood, and there's some issues with it.
Okay, I think we're good.
Thanks.
You finished reminiscing?
Yeah. Not really, I'm still holding it. I think Barker got fouled at the end. We should have been shooting 10 foul shots. And he was like a 90% foul shooter, so.
Number 9D, approval of the Heritage Day for the 5th grade students at Cherry River PC, Golly River, on October 6, 2023. And I'm assuming that's the one on Fenwick Mountain they go to every year. Any discussion on that?
Oh, where is it?
It's at the New Hope Community Building.
Oh, okay. There are 2 Heritage Days. They're having one at the middle school and one at the mountain. That's why I asked.
This one's on the mountain.
Okay.
Any other discussion? E, approval of the policy chapter finance title, and that's the attendance incentive. And so that was presented to us a little earlier. And personally, I agree with that 100%. I think that service personnel should have the same opportunities as the professional. And I believe it'll pay for itself. Any discussion? F, approval of the policy chapter finance title incentive pay for early notice of retirement incentive. Once again, that does help move things along with personnel, in my opinion.
The only comment on it is that's where the correction needs to be. Where it refers to
Yeah, I
the
believe
attendance
Ken's got
policy.
that correction on that.
Oh, right, correction.
Okay, G, approval of policy chapter personnel, bus driver substitutes in areas of critical need and shortage. Any discussion? H, approval of school crisis plan MOUs for Richwood High School and Birch River Elementary, and those are in your packets. And we usually don't discuss those publicly, because that lets people know things they don't need to know. Any questions on those? Action item I, discussion with possible action on donating the Meadowby School property to the Kathleen and John Faltis Child Shelter.
They would like to come in and do it. When we give it to them, do pictures or do something in the paper, because they're excited to actually receive that building.
The only thing I suggest, if the board agrees to donate that, and I believe, Chris, the county, they say that was worth about $200,000. Is that what they? So the only thing is, if they fold or decide they're not doing that anymore, I think we should have the first clause to get that building, that property back, if we want it back. Now, if it's ran down and we don't want it, we don't have to take it. So
We have lawyers write that up.
we will put that in the deed, if everybody agrees. And then, any other discussion on that? And then, action item J is the one that we're going to table until next meeting, until we get further direction from the state road.
Yeah,
basically.
cost estimate of what it's going to cost us to do it. To allow them to use it.
So any discussion on any of these action items?
I just want to make a comment, going back to A on the fields, that this is what the board wants to do, but everything's going to be subject to bids.
Right.
It's not like we're going, for the public, it's not like we're not going to get another look at the bite at the apple, but the architects need a direction.
Right.
And that's what we did. That'd be my comment there.
Yeah, and we can change one or the other, or
Yeah, I
all of
mean,
them.
it's all going to be subject to money in the bids at the end of the day.
Right.
The architects need a direction in order to do that.
So we've already voted on A. Do I have a motion to accept action items B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I?
I make that motion.
Mr. Berry makes a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, consent items, finance.
Okay, first item is payment of current invoices. You guys should have that in your packet. Did you have any questions about any of those?
Have we got all of our buses in yet?
We're still waiting on 2. Should have them in any day.
So the 132 on the current invoice is the one we got.
That was the one special needs bus. I asked them to put a rush on that, and they kind of put us ahead of a few other customers, so that we could get that on the road, because we had a special needs student that on a route that we desperately needed a special needs bus for. And so Bluebird worked with us to get that on the road a little quicker.
When I went by there the other day, they had the new bus sitting there.
They're still just getting a couple small things. I mean, it could be any day.
I think we're good.
What's the SELA Academy?
I'm sorry?
The SELA Academy? What is it?
Zila had a
me, Sarah, what do they call that? Yeah. They got together and had a professional development meeting. They do that sometimes in the summer with their staff. And those are expenses from that.
Title I paid for it.
Partially.
Oh, I was just curious about what it was. I wasn't familiar with it. That's just the staff of their school.
Yes.
Oh, the director of the Richwood Library asked me if the check for the library was going to be issued or had already been issued. She requested it a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's in this batch or if it'll be in the next one.
I didn't see it on here, but I meant to look back at last time. I thought I remembered something on the last report. But,
It may have been, Sherry and I talked about the payment for the libraries. I can look and see if that's already been, or if it's in the
okay,
works.
that's all right.
I don't see it in here.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have supplements and transfers, which is also in your packet. These were just the ones for August. Most of these are just pretty standard, the grant awards that we normally get through the year. A lot of these are CTE grants for equipment replacement, the academic math and English teachers at OTEC. There was a slight decrease in our Perkins budget from what we were originally thinking, of $427.
Just educate me just a little bit. When you do I'm not real familiar with governmental accounting, but when I see that you're listing supplies and then you're crediting revenue, is that because it wasn't in the original budget and this is a supplemented budget? Is that why you're calling that?
Right.
So the original budget has that, and anytime you get money in from another program, grant, whatever, then that goes into revenue. And
Right.
I got
So
you.
you'll see, like,
I got you.
on this Perkins, this first one, it looks a little bit misleading because the journal entry total is $78,000.
Right.
But there is that debit to revenue of $427, and that's because there was a decrease in revenue from our original.
Okay.
Let's see, Panther Creek got a little grant from Highmark for a water bottle filling station. We are again doing the fresh fruits and vegetables program in several of our schools. Save the Children, which we've done before, their community engagement portion is there. And Gear Up, this is year 3 of Gear Up, so the budget for Gear Up for the secondary schools is in here as well. There are no questions on those. We've got contracts. There's this first item on ZMM, the Big Creek project, is a construction change directive. And that was just something that needed to be signed. It's not a change order yet. It was just for them to be able to continue their work. And then the next one was the certificate of substantial completion for the Memorial Walking Trail. That work is finished, so they just need you to sign off that that has been completed.
That money went through our
Yes.
budget.
Yes, we paid for those expenses, and so once this is signed, then we can do the paperwork that we need to do to be reimbursed for that. I think we got a partial advance maybe at the beginning of that, so we need to settle up with them, so we need to do this to show that the work's completed. So that we
Yeah, I wouldn't complain about the trail or anything, but I knew we didn't have much to say about it, although it goes through
It
everybody.
actually turned out pretty nice.
Yeah.
We were up there Friday night, and the benches are nice, and, I mean,
Although they parked on it,
yeah,
Oh, they still parked on it.
yeah, they still drove on it. Knocked a few trees over.
There are a lot of people that do walk on that, though.
They are. I was there this morning, there's people walking on it.
yeah, they requested a trash can, by the way.
I'm sure.
Just
Probably,
not thought
it
that.
probably does need one.
It's more for the pee-wee football than the walkers, because walkers are.
The walkers said actually they were picking trash up, and they didn't have anywhere to put it, so.
Okay, and then in addition to that, we have bids. The boiler replacement bid, that was the only bid that was received. And then we have NCHS vending to Mountain Vending, Glade Creek to Cardinal Photography for their yearbooks and photos, and Birch River TSS Photography.
That deal on the boilers, is that about right? What you got?
Well, so it's actually less. When I brought this to the board back in March, I don't want to get into a lot of the details on it, but we had estimated closer to 250,000, but we were looking at doing replacing what we had with 4 high efficiency boilers. We ran into some snags with that and some timeline issues, and so I reached out, and what we decided to do was just to replace what we have with exactly what we have. Those boilers did a really good job for while they were there, and so that's why you see the price. I think it's a lot lower than what we had anticipated, and we can get it done quicker. Going with those high efficiency that was going to push it into probably next summer, and we can't wait that long.
No, because one of them are down.
One's down and the other is on its last leg, so we have to get this done before winter.
No, I'm sorry, did you do your out-of-state travel?
No, and if you have questions about this, we might ask Tom. Out-of-state travel is for a Fort Lauderdale, Florida trip in September for 3 people from Bochek. I don't really have any other details about that.
Anybody have any questions for Kristen?
I can arrange the travel.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept consent items? A, finance 1, 2, 3, 4, and B, out-of-state travel request.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Ferguson makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Moose. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Personnel. Maybe not. Maybe not.
We have a lot of it.
Yeah, we need to have an executive session. Right. Just, it might take
Okay.
personnel. Yeah.
Do you need me in it or not in it?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to go next door to
You just go next door to the small board, and go to next door. And then go back in here.
Okay,
what?
we'll do that. We're going in there. Oh, I need a motion for that, sorry.
I make a motion to go into
I guess I can leave now.
Second. All in favor? At 6:24. Session.
Make that motion.
Mr. Berry makes a motion, seconded by? Second. Mr. Green? All in favor? No decisions were made in executive session.
It's 6:33.
At 6:32. Sorry, ma'am.
We have a few positions that we were able to get recommendations at the last minute that I would like to go over with you, or since the agenda went out. On page 3, the itinerant for counselor, we did not have any certified applicants. That position has been reposted. The long-term sub at Golly River, Penny Beam, and that is an overflow in a kindergarten classroom. We had a few students more than we were permitted. The 4th grade teacher at Zila Elementary School, Madeline Pebble. However, we are still waiting on her from Fayette County, and she has accepted a job at Birch River. So we are going to be holding her at Birch River when she arrives in Nicholas County, and then we will release her when we can fill that position at Birch River in 3rd grade. Morgan McHenry, long-term sub at Glade Creek Elementary. And then the next 2 we will have to strike. We're still, one on the special education at Summersville Middle School. We're still seeking and interviewing. The long-term secondary teacher learning center, ALC, Adam Baker. And you'll also notice below we're going to be hiring him as a long-term sub. Day-to-day substitutes for Nicholas County Schools. We have Kate Belmont, Crystal Clemens, William Womack, Phyllis H. Mazula, Terry Morris, Laundry Bailey, Jennifer Foreman, Jamie Cruz. If you look at the multi-classified A2 supervisory aid, specialized healthcare, transportation aid, Nicholas County High School, there were 2 positions. The second one is Stacy Murphy. And the multi-classified COVID-2 supervisory aid, transportation, specialized healthcare, Cherry River is Ashley Freeman. Multi-classified aid, supervisory aid, transportation aid, specialized healthcare, Mount Lookout is Rachel McMillan. Early childhood classroom assistant teacher, Mount Lookout is Tina Brown. Cafeteria manager at Birch River is Holly Bale. And then I need to make one correction. Sherry Hanna, that is a full-time cook at Cherry River Elementary. And then the custodian 3 split shift at Zila is Dawn Smith. ECAT 1 at Summersville Elementary is Angie Miller. The COVID multi-classified aid 2 supervisory aid specialized health care is Linda Yeager. The ECAT at kindergarten for Zila is Rebecca Parsons. The ECAT at Golly River is Megan Milam. Day-to-day substitute bus driver is Steve Amick. And these are extracurricular professional. Rotha Young, academic interventionist at Birch River. Minnie Kaufman, academic interventionist at Birch River. Mitzi Roberts, academic interventionist at Birch River. Tammy Hunter, academic interventionist at Golly River. Aldita Hillman, academic interventionist at Golly River. Sonia Kraft, academic interventionist at Golly River. Ellen Davis, academic interventionist at Mount Lookout. And then we are striking and will be reposting the second academic interventionist at Mount Lookout. Academic interventionist at Zila, Terry Lewis. Sharon Smith, academic interventionist at Zila. Peggy Benton, academic interventionist at Zila. Don Johnson, academic interventionist at Zila Elementary. And then Lori Simus, academic interventionist at Panther Creek. Phyllis Mazzilla, academic interventionist at Panther Creek. We will have to repost the academic interventionist at Mount Nebo. Susan Barnett, mathematics instructional support coach at Cherry River. Cynthia Sheldon, instructional coach countywide. Terry Brown, instructional coach countywide. Tony Nicholas, instructional coach countywide. Noel Sparks, academic and graduation interventionist. Patricia Matheny, academic graduation interventionist. David Henderson, academic and graduation interventionist. Ernie Jarvis, graduation and academic interventionist. Extracurricular service. Carl Johnson, extracurricular bus operator, Save the Children, Summersville. Delbert Copenhagen, extracurricular bus operator, Save the Children, Cherry River. Roy Moore, extracurricular bus operator, Golly River. Tammy Rader, extracurricular bus operator, Save the Children, Golly River. Neil Collins, extracurricular bus operator, Save the Children, Birch River. And then we will have to repost the second Birch River extracurricular one. Barbara Boyce, extracurricular cook, Save the Children, Cherry River. Goldie O'Quinn, extracurricular cook, Save the Children at Golly River. Letta Boggs, extracurricular cook, Save the Children, Summersville Elementary. Connie Davis, extracurricular cook, Save the Children, Birch River. We will be reposting the parent coordinator at Birch River. And we will be, they didn't have time to interview and give a recommendation for the Cherry River parent coordinator. Angela Brown, parent coordinator at Zila Elementary School. Mary Lane, parent coordinator at Golly River Elementary School. Vicki Morrison, parent coordinator at Mount Lookout Elementary School. And Stephanie Thomas, parent coordinator at Panther Creek Elementary.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the personnel as presented?
Make a motion.
Mr. Green makes a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Berry. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to reports. SESC, Mr. Ferguson.
Nothing to report.
Okay, Bright Horizons, Mr. Green.
Nothing to report.
Number 13, items for future agendas. So we have the one tabled. Want to table that item? Anything else?
On the meetings this weekend, Friday and Saturday, I noticed the time to arrive is it 4, but does the meeting start at 1?
Time to check in. Time to check in.
Okay, meeting starts at 1 as usual.
Yeah, they have like a pre-conference meeting, starts at 1 o'clock, and then goes on the rest of the day.
General
Of course,
session.
Yeah, and then Saturday morning.
Yeah, till noon.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't had a chance to pull that up.
I'll get you one, that's for sure.
It looks like it started like at 8:30, but it's the
Yeah.
executive
That's-
board, and
yeah.
11 o'clock's the overview board.
I think the general
1 o'clock
session,
The main meeting starts.
You don't want any part of that, though.
Oh, trust me.
general session is 1 o'clock.
Okay, anything? All right, future meeting dates. So our next board meeting, again, will be a public input listing session and a regular meeting on Monday, September 18th. And that will be at 4 o'clock right here at the board office. The next regular meeting after that will be Monday, October 2nd. And the other meeting in October will be October 16th, and those are both at the board office starting at 6 o'clock. Anything else?
If there's any major thing going on the 16th, I won't be here, but I can always try to phone in or something.
We'll get you set up.
Yeah, well, Chris can take care of it if I have internet. But if there's something important or something going on, I need.
You have something important to do?
I got one question, and probably for Kristen. I can't remember, it was one of my first board meetings or whatever. We're in like a dead period, and then we'll start getting financial statements, actually?
Right,
Is that
I'm
correct?
working on compiling the financial statements right now, and then after that's over, then we can carry over all of the funds from 23 into 24. So right now, those aren't carried over, so if I print reports, it's gonna look like everything's in a negative because there isn't a budget to support all those expenditures. So hopefully in October, we'll be able to get back to that.
And I may have asked you this before, but where are we at on faculty senate money?
That should be first, those will be approved on our next board meeting.
Okay. Somebody asked me that again. Thank you. All hearts and minds clear? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Booth makes a motion, second by Mr. Perry. All in favor? Aye. At 6:45.